60 to 80% or whatever the number was of things are just not posted.
Correct.
You showed that LinkedIn is important, but what are the things that we could do other than having a really crisp, bright, smart LinkedIn profile? But how else do you find that 60 to 80 networking with friends? I mean, I'm really curious about that magical.
Like tapping
formula.
into that hidden job number.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
Something I know I think Charlie presented on before is informational interviewing. We didn't really go over it in this, but informational interviewing I feel like is such a huge way to find those. So just to lightly touch upon it, it's just connecting with someone in your field, someone whose job you'd like to have, and then kind of going through this list of questions and making a time to meet with them. It's a whole different topic. I don't even know how to summarize it in like a few minutes. But that is such a good way to find the hidden job market too, because that's making that personal connection. Yeah.
I agree. LinkedIn is going to be a huge tool for you, but at the same point, it doesn't discount the face-to-face interaction. You'll gain so much more by the face-to-face because they've actually met you, but LinkedIn is just a tool. So that face-to-face, you can't lose it. You still need it, absolutely.
Because you could meet someone and then they say, actually it's not posted yet, but I know that someone in our company is moving to wherever. You know, so that's even a hidden job market where people know that a position's opening, but it hasn't been posted yet.
Or you've, possibly done an informational interview with like a friend of a friend at a company, and then in 2 months, maybe you reach out to them and get introduced to somebody in a different division of that same company, or like a job opens up and they're having a chat, and actually, I did this informational interview with somebody, let me introduce you. So I think, it's almost like a hidden web.
Yeah, in
Thank
addition,
you.
again, the bi-seasons example that I shared before, go after what you want. Something that you're very interested in, go after it. That passion and stuff that Jessica was even mentioning, it'll show, and then they might be interested. I don't have this position available right now, but I'm really interested in this person. She showed it, passion for this role, and she has really great experience. I might be able to create a position. Sometimes companies don't even realize they need that role, and they can create positions for that.
And I think doing informational interviewing, you can be doing that while you even have another position, because you're learning about company culture that way. That's a way, maybe you're not interviewing once you're like in the interview, but you're interviewing beforehand, because you're getting an understanding of a certain department or how that company functions, because culture is so different. And you want to make sure that, you fit.
Yeah, and I know we didn't talk a lot about career changes, but they can be a good way to kind of, with a career change, say you're in a current job, you can talk about like, this is something I'd really like to do. Also, I was told once, go through the jobs that most interest you. They all have bullet points of things you're going to do. Make yourself copy and paste those onto your own Word document. Make like a 4-page, gather different bullet points that you like just say like your dream job. Like one says facilitating workshops, one says managing projects. Put like a 4-page together of all these bullet points of jobs that you would really like to do. And something you could do too, when you're meeting in that informational interview, you can almost make kind of a job description of something that you're really qualified for. Does that make sense? And then you can almost tell to them, this is what I'm looking for in a job. I'm really interested, does your company have something like this? And I remember a story that I heard was that a woman went and did that, and they were like, how'd you know about this position? And she was like, what are you talking about? And they're like, we call this a P9 something in our company, and this is what we're hiring for in a few months. Like, this is exactly what we're looking for. That's like an amazing story, and she got the job. But, it's something, so you know your bullet points. That's just an example.
Yeah, I think I do. Okay, I did a talk at Crossroads meeting back in July of 2011. It is available if you go to YouTube and Google my name. unfortunately that shows up right away. I hate looking at myself online. I hate hearing myself. But anyway, it's like a 42-minute presentation about informational interviewing. And one of the things that I talked about that night was different aspects of your job search. You can have a passive job search where you're waiting for things to react, waiting for things to come to you. Sitting by the phone, waiting for it to ring, just various things, versus a dynamic where I'm out there actively doing things, trying to make something happen. The other way it could be impersonal in terms of, well, I applied online to 3 jobs this week and nobody responded to me. Or what are some other impersonal ways you can do it? Mailing it in. I was starting to say, some people I know still are trying to go by companies and walk in and apply at the HR department. This is sort of a little more personal, but again, the idea is to get people to know you. So, yeah, the point is, if you're doing a passive and impersonal search, the red box, it's going to be harder for you to find those jobs. But if you're out there actively, dynamically meeting people face to face, you're in that sweeter spot up there where you're going to find more opportunities. Because of the nature of the work I do in nonprofit, there is a lot of turnover and moving around. And most of the jobs I've found, 80-90% of the jobs I've found have been because I knew a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy who was looking for a job. And the only way I found out about those was to be out there meeting with people. I would try to have 2 network appointments per day. Just start off the bat. If I don't have a job, I'm meeting with people for coffee. I drank a lot of coffee. I got really caffeinated, which is probably why I talked too fast on that one phone interview. But you need to be out there talking to people. Again, you can go to that YouTube video and it talks about what you do on a typical informational interview. But it's a real good way, and it builds your confidence. You start out with, one of you mentioned about starting out with your friends, people who are safe, and you build your confidence in interviewing and explaining why you're doing this, So, okay, somebody else.
Good question. Yes?
Salary expectations.
That's always a tricky one.
How do you, so for my career field, I understand, kind of the ranges. But then when in the interview they say, so what are your salary expectations? How do you kind of say, well, what do you offer? How do you go back and forth and what's, not that there's a best way, but.
Yeah, I personally think if we ask you the question, you should have an answer. Some sort of range. I know sometimes if you have to apply online, you have to put in a dollar amount. They require it. That one is difficult. And every HR professional recruiter may say something different. My experience is, and I know we've had situations that I know about, you don't want to necessarily lowball yourself too much because then you might lose the job. You don't want to go too high because you're going to lose the job. Try to be in that middle range. It's really what you have to be comfortable with. Know your range. That's the first step. So I think that's huge. Going online to search that out, figuring out what that range is, and then go from there. Say, okay, my range is from 20,000 to 50,000, whatever it is. I would be really comfortable with 30,000, but I really want 40,000. Go 35. So try to figure it out. It's a numbers game. Even though that you say that $35,000 mark, and you get that interview, you can always say, I know I put 35,000, it requested a number. This is where I was in my past position. I'm willing to negotiate if it's the right position. You can always have those conversations as soon as you get in the door. But you're right, it is a difficult situation. You don't want to underprice, you don't want to overprice, so you kind of have to play the numbers game and try to find a middle ground for that. I don't know if you guys have some additional thoughts.
Yeah, definitely do your research on the range. I think what I was saying, it's just what I've heard, is to really only bring it up like when you get the job offer. And the way to phrase it, I think it's also doing some research, like meet with a financial planner. If it's something that you've been out of work and you really need a job, then you have a certain bottom line. If you're making a career switch and you're trying to just move upwards, then know your number that you want to. If it's a lateral switch, and it's tough to get used to a certain salary and then get laid off and then know your next salary will be lower, but just looking at your expenses and making sure you can swing it. So I think a way to phrase it would just say, you're interested in this company and this is a great opportunity for me, you know, and what maybe, I don't know, should you say what your salary was in the past, but then saying you're willing to have a range?
If they push for it, I always skirt the issue.
Yeah.
So when I've been in my interviews, I was like, well, you know, it really doesn't matter the money, the amount. What matters is most that I'm happy with my job, I do well at the tasks that I'm doing, and that you guys are, you know, feel that I'm successful. Because in the long run, we're both going to be prosperous. So that's what I kind of look for. They don't always say that's a good answer. They sometimes want to make sure that you are within their range, so they might push for it again. So that's when, yeah, okay, well, this is what I made at the last job. Again, you know, this is where I'd be more comfortable with, or et cetera.
Yeah, you could say I've calculated my obligations and this is a number I need to stay between. You could kind of, they push for a number.
And I think if it's a verbal conversation, that's much easier than, you know, just having to write down a number on an application.
Right.
Because if they're asking you, they're already interested,
Mm-hmm.
you know, somewhat. And you can give them a number, and if they say, you know, that's out of our range, like, okay, so maybe I can be flexible, you know, depending on what the benefits are. It's not just the number, right? You know, you're kind of looking at a full package and the culture fit and the department. So I think, you know, if they're asking the question in person, I think I don't know. I would go, maybe, I would swing like a little higher if it's a verbal conversation, because I don't think you're going to discount yourself if they're asking you in person necessarily.
And if they're very interested, they can always come back to you. I've had that a few times where I really like this guy. I wonder if there is some room for, you know, negotiation at least at that point. But that's between like 5,000 and 10,000 at that point instead of 2,000 to 3,000.
I'd like to get your feedback on a comment I make. Now, I'm a recovering CPA, so I tend to analyze things. So when I'm thinking about a job offer, one of the things that enters into my mind is not just the gross salary, but how much am I going to be bringing home? And if I, you know, that's the apple to apple I want to compare. I took one job that was paying face value 20% less than the previous job, but the benefits were such that I was bringing home the same amount of pay. You know, I was happy I could take the job. So I don't know when you say the comment like, well, it kind of depends on how the benefits work, because sometimes you have to pay a whole lot of the medical or whatever. Sometimes they have a very good plan. Sometimes they have a really high deductible. Other times they have, you know, a really sweet plan. So that can enter into it. And how much are they providing in retirement benefits, if any? And I don't know when you should how you make that comment without, you know, if they haven't told you about those benefits. I think that's a safe comment. But
I think a good time to bring that up is when they're asking you.
Yeah.
And so,
But not before.
Not before, yeah. And I think my first statement always, if I'm asked, is, you know what, I can be, I'm flexible with that. What is your range that you're looking for? Because if you can get them to give you an indication,
That's right.
you know, that's the best scenario. You know, sometimes they will not give you any indication. They're like, no, you need to say a number.
Yeah.
And I think at that point you can say, okay, here's the number I'm going to throw out there, but like, can we also talk about the benefits and everything else? Because I am looking at this as a total package.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they'll either give you an HR person's information, or you could even at that point say, yeah, can I connect with HR to talk more about benefits? Because it's not like benefits are listed online. They're not really accessible most times for jobs.
Correct. Great question. Anything else? Yes.
This is a topic we just touched on Thursday night.
Mhm.
And that has changed like nobody's business inside of 90 days. When we talked about this 90 days ago, it was, oh, you want to say that for the second interview. It was like was pointed out about, well, you know, let them for later. Now, that's gone. Now this is a filter. And your salary range, it eliminates you what bring you in. And so, from a fair to fair principle, the employer wants to get you for the cheapest they can get you. The employee wants to get as much as they can get, and the two need to meet. So I have long held that if you put it right out there, you save everybody a lot of time. And it's not an offensive manner, but it has to be put in such a way that the one thing that was the old technology used to be, I was told that, because I had to search for a job, it took me 2 years. So don't ever put in there negotiable.
Yeah.
Because they're looking for an answer, as you pointed out. They want a hard firm answer. Now, do I have to go up or do I have to go down? It's similar to dickering for a new carpenters. So be honest about it, and if it doesn't work out, well, it's not the end of the world.
That's true. And I half agree with you, and I respectfully half disagree with you. Only because if I recently got another job at Wisconsin Vision Associates, and were not in my range. So if I had posted my range, I might have lost out on that opportunity. I didn't post my range. I did happen to know of some connections, so it was kind of worth it to do a little bit more digging into who I knew and who was connected, and kind of get to the bottom of what they were looking for, because I was very interested in their company, knowing that they were growing. So I took actually a $10,000 pay cut, which isn't terrible, but then I took, I got there, I started, I enjoyed the company, they're continuing to grow, and in 6 months I had received a substantial raise. So I'm very excited about that. So sometimes you have to take a step back to take a step forwards, and a lot of people are very nervous about that. You have to make your own decisions on your life balances, but at the same point, sometimes it is a great opportunity to step into a different type of role and grow into it. So even though you have a lot of experience or something that you've gone through life with, sometimes you still might have to take that step backwards to help them grow. And again, I know we had the conversation on Thursday. If you do have 5, 6, 10 years to give, companies are still open to that and are excited about that. So again, you might have to take a little step back, but very interesting growing that. Any other? Yes?
Yeah. It's interesting to me that a filter inside of an organization's postings would represent that I would be qualified for several different roles in one of the disciplines that I really have strength in. But then in the qualifications, as an example, there would be I don't know if the word was required, but that was like consultancy experience with one of the major firms, and I don't have that to offer. So the question is, how many of the absolute skills do you have to have in order, I don't want to waste a recruiter's time or hiring manager's time. I would love to have consideration, but I want to respect, I understand the word required, I understand the word desired, but if neither one of those is there, I'm kind of looking for...
The funny thing is that job descriptions are kind of quickly written sometimes.
Borrowed from others.
Yeah. So I wouldn't read too far into those words. Don't worry about that. Still apply for those positions, even though that you don't have a certification or even a degree at some point. You still go after those jobs that you're very interested in my opinion. Again, sometimes it works a little bit better with smaller or medium-sized company versus larger companies, because they have the opportunity to weed them out, and then they require those certifications. Then they have to pay for that. So there's different ranges with that. But I definitely agree. If you don't have the certification and it says it, don't read too far into it. Just go for it anyway.
And I think a job description, that is a company's ideal person.
Yeah.
But that's not
kind of
necessarily
was, but...
That person might not exist.
Exactly.
It's very
Yeah, right.
true. Yeah.
Right, right.
Very true.
I think a good rule of thumb that I heard is if you have approximately 70% or more of what they're asking for, there's a good chance you might make a good candidate.
Absolutely.
Now, if you don't have that, that doesn't mean you shouldn't apply, but I think that's a nice rule of thumb.
And actually, a lot of the times I'll hire for culture or personality before I hire for experience. So I can train somebody just about anything. I can send you to school for just about anything if you have that aptitude to learn. So I wouldn't worry about it, because you're right, the ideal person probably isn't out there, but we could mold somebody into that perfect person. So even though you don't have those things, I really wouldn't worry about it.
On the salary discussion, I've been thinking a lot about this. And I don't know if still no one here said that the companies are trying to get you as cheap as possible, they're trying to get as maximum as possible. I don't have, I think at one time I had the attitude, I don't anymore. I have a range that I'm looking for, but I don't necessarily have to make the maximum. What I want, and I don't know if companies will go along with this, but I would like to make enough so that when I get into a company and start looking around everything else, I feel really good about I'm being paid what I'm worth. In the company, their attitude is we're really getting a good deal for what we're paying this guy. We're getting our money's worth. If those two meet, I think we got a good deal here. It's going to last. If I get in and after 6 months I find, well, I'm not really being paid what I'm worth, I probably will leave. So then I don't keep me very long. On the same side, the company isn't going to like to keep me. You know, they're overpaying me. If they overpay me more than they want just to get me in there, unless I just turn out to be very exceptional and bring $1 million every year, they're not going to want to stay pay me that much. So somehow, I don't know if companies are thinking the same way, but that's the way it should be thought to me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a sticky situation. Unfortunately, some companies are going to try to get on the cheap side because we don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's kind of detrimental for me because a lot of people, if you get in there just to get cheap and they're desperate for a job, they're going to leave.
Mm-hmm. They find the right candidate, they'll pay for it, no matter if it's outside the range or not. That's for sure. So it just depends, and again, that's just one situation. There's many situations. Our company always pays on top of the salary range. So even though the marketplace, if you will, has a salary range from, let's just say, 30 to 50,000, we're always going to try to pay above that because we do want to retain our associates because it's important to us to contain that education, experience, knowledge, etc.
I just had one other question too. I just had a recent conversation with a recruiter. We were talking, how much did you make in your corporate company? This amount, how much are you willing, what are you looking for then? So I'm looking for this amount. He says, oh, you want to raise? I actually was looking for a higher amount. I felt like I was kind of being underpaid at this platform position. I was actually looking for. But you're saying, I think I heard you say that I mean, and he said that it's hard to get a company to take someone for more than what they're already making, even if you were being underpaid. I mean, is that kind of the consensus is that true? Or?
Not necessarily. In my personal opinion, and these ladies can correct me if they feel something different. But in my case, I don't care what you made before. I want to make sure that you're comfortable going forward. I want to make sure that you're within your range. And I want to, I probably am going to start you a little lower because I don't know you from the next person. But I would start you at a certain range. And if you come in and you're doing a great job, I would certainly bump you up substantially if you're really bringing it to the table. But again, I'd start you lower because I really don't know you. So that's why sometimes we start lower, just because we don't know. But definitely we want to stay within that range somewhere. So I really don't care where you were before, as long as you're committing to, yes, this is a comfortable range for me. I'm within that salary range that is good for that position, and then we can move forward from there. So that's just my personal opinion, but other companies may be different.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree with you, and I would say I would try not to, if a company is not like requiring you to divulge the information of what you made before, because sometimes people don't require it. I wouldn't just throw it out there, because if they don't know, then they don't know like the increase that they're giving you. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I've not had people, I guess in my experience, not be bumped because of what they were making before. If they can, you know, if they're very skilled and they can do this job, then the company's going to pay it.
Yeah.
In my experience is I was getting ready to leave anyway, and I was always talking to the employees, and I don't know if they wrong or what, but all of a sudden it's like they made the decision for me. So, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, we have about 5 or 10 more minutes for a few more questions, and then I just want to make sure we do have that one-on-one assistance as well. So take your
I
question.
have 2 questions. One, a follow-up to this discussion, and that is, what is the trend in the interview? What I'm hearing is it seems the trend is for the employer not to probe about what they may necessarily. They're more focused on the specific job at hand and discussing that. And if, for those that do ask, what's the best way to handle that? Just directly answer the question? You know, what feedback can you offer on that?
I'm sorry, I just wanted to reiterate, if the company is asking you,
Well, do companies still typically ask that question, or is the trend changing? Because that was the historic norm,
sure,
fewer and fewer. But what happens with those that still do ask? You just lay it on the table?
I would say it's, I don't know what you guys think, but I think it's happening less in the interview and it more just happens at the offer.
Yeah.
But I've also had where like maybe a phone interview has been done and then HR calls to ensure that you're okay within a particular range to proceed into the like second interview in
And that
person.
seems to be because they want you, they know you're a little overqualified and they want to throw out there, hey, the salary is more probably entry level than you're used to, but do you want this opportunity? I'd say just because the job market is competitive, it's competitive to even get an interview, and in that interview they're interviewing so many people, they really are looking for fit. And yeah, the salary doesn't come up until the offer, and then negotiation can be a whole nother thing. That podcast I told you about has all these different ways to accept an offer, to decline an offer, to work with negotiation, because I think a lot of people don't quite know how to navigate that, especially now that salaries are so much less. I mean, it's a great job that hundreds of people are applying for, and it's barely sustainable to even like own a home. So I mean, yeah, I just really see it happening at the offer, if anything. I don't know.
So how many are asking up front, the person being interviewed, what did you make in your last position?
It's a smaller percentage going forward. It
Right.
depends on who's interviewing and what type of position that you're interviewing for. Recruiters might ask you quicker because they need to pop them in. That's how they make their money. They want to get people placed in their positions fast. So they might.
Whatever recruiter I talk to, that's automatically came up with.
Yeah,
A
she
recruiter,
wants to
yeah.
know if you're within that range or not, and if you're not, then she might move to the next person. So I think a smaller amount are asking for that. We have, contrary to your belief, possibly HR people that actually don't hire people anymore. We do some interviewing and then we pass them on to the hiring managers. Hiring managers don't even know salary and shouldn't know salary. So we actually want to make sure that they're a cultural fit, make sure that you like them just as much as they like you, which is great. And then, like they were saying, then HR will call you to confirm some salary. So actually, it is more towards the back. Unless you're dealing with recruiters, it happens a lot more often. Do you have a question?
I do. The notion of having work samples. Leaving an employer, you get the confidentiality thing. You know, you get it when you're coming in. It's an integrity thing and an ethics thing for me, and yet everyone wants to see your work.
It's a really good question. Now, when you leave a company, there is an opportunity for you to ask. So these are work opportunities that I've had that I invested my time and thoughts into. May I take some of these? So it's really a question. May I take some of these to use that at my next interviewing opportunities? So granted, most of the time they're going to say no. Or you can just create new, if you're like in graphic design or something, for example, then there's an opportunity for you to just create a company, you know, just for fun, create some different marketing materials, put up an Instagram, you know, website or something, and then use that when you're interviewing. I hope that answers your question.
It does.
It's very difficult to use
tough
the
one.
past
Yeah.
information because of the confidentiality, but it's if you just ask somebody and get it a waiver, write it down to protect yourself, that they are allowing you to take these few items, then you can use those. Always ask.
That can vary. I took boxes full of stuff. Last one, so there's on the company. You're being straight up with them. Like you said, you asked. Some things I asked to take all the different electronic files I had on my computer, and so they had to give me on the computer. I just started to go through it, make sure there wasn't anything that was company related. I do a lot of research, and so there's like articles and research papers on I wanted to take. And they had no problem. They gave me a disc of all that stuff on it.
That's great.
And I had my boss come in and said, here's what I want to take, and here's all your stuff. So usually if you just ask, to be honest with you, they know you're being honest. They don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, true. Or if you have to call them later, if you have a still connection, you have a good, don't burn any bridges because you might need that opportunity. So call them back and say, hey, I know I worked on this program. Can I have some of those brochures or something that I could use for my work profile? Maybe one last question? Yes.
Help me understand why hiring managers should know about salaries.
It's important for them. Sometimes they don't make as much as you do. That's the first thing. Sometimes the hiring managers are making less than the person that we're going to bring in. So that's number one. Number two, they might discriminate, and we protect the hiring managers from discriminating based on how much a person makes. Well, they should be doing more. They make more. They shouldn't be doing this. They don't make enough. So we just try to protect them from making those decisions. That's our responsibility.
Thanks.
Okay?
I was just going to point out one thing on LinkedIn. I think Jessica had brought this up earlier. If you look under the View Profile tab, that blue tab, if you look right under there, the link there, Tara. Yeah. So that's the thing that you can edit, and you can take out all of those. You can change that into whatever you want, and
Or create your custom
Use the
URL.
pen.
oh yeah, I think you
The
were.
pen,
Yeah, the little pen.
edit.
You can do create your custom URL, I think is where it is.
On the right.
I'm just going to
Up
stop
there on the
pushing
right.
buttons.
Oh no, you're just scroll
Go
up.
up.
Scroll up.
Too late, I already
You're
hit the
very
button.
close.
I'm just gonna walk away and let the expert deal with it.
Also, I'd say on LinkedIn, I know you were
There.
talking about the premium membership. Sometimes I would get emails that you can get it free for a month. I don't know if anyone's gotten that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, all the time.
I found it really helpful because you can change your settings if you want that no one can see that you're searching for them, but I would research everyone I was meeting with because you can see their full profile. So that's when I was talking about knowing those little details, like where they went to college or what other jobs they had. So I would say if you're out of work right now, then interviewing and finding new jobs is your full-time job. So put some money into it. I mean, do the first free month, and then I thought it was helpful to do the premium. So it's up to you.
So I was just going to say, I would suggest editing this and just put your
Put your
like
name.
first and last name, and then it looks very clean when you have it on your resume.
Or say you have a popular last name. I know someone did, Ann Smith, and then say you only work in Denver. You could write Denver. I don't know
Or
if that's
like
the best.
last name, first name, or
Yeah, if there's several of you. Anyways.
it's just like really simple, but clean.
Yeah.
I understand that LinkedIn doesn't allow you to upload a resume.
Upload a resume.
Yeah.
You actually can upload a resume. You can have like attached documents in your LinkedIn.
Okay, and because I know something came up, well, that's what I heard, they weren't letting you upload resumes, but then a thing came up, and I'm still new to it. I mean, I've had it for several years.
Sure.
Just now, I'm
Right.
But some people said, you want to attach a document, push the button, but I didn't have a document to attach.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can have like an attached,
It reads well like a resume.
it does, but then you can also just have like an attached document.
Okay. Where is that located?
Oh, I'd have to play.
I think the attachments are closer to the bottom.
Yeah.
Not sure if I'm qualified to play with this right now.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
it's
it's
where
where
you
I
can like
could play
edit
around
your
with it.
profile,
Yeah.
and then
But
if you uploaded it,
we
you
can
would
share
see
that
it.
with you on our one-on-one
Okay, yeah,
assistance.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, we appreciate everybody for coming today. Hopefully you received everything out of today that you were hoping for. Again, all of us presenters, plus Charlie and David in the back, our leaders, are going to actually stay for one-on-one assistance. We do have scheduled till 1. You're welcome to stay and speak with us. And again, hopefully you get everything out that you're looking for. So I'm just going to close in prayer in case you want to leave or take off. So with that, Lord, I just want to be thankful to you and bringing us together again today. Thank you for being strong and holding us strong during our crossroads. Always willing to go to battle for us. I really appreciate all of that and bringing us together again. Sometimes we feel a little small and powerless, but you're always there to bring us up and lift us up in days that we really need you. So we appreciate that. Help us to go forward each day with that wonderful assurance that you're going to help us and hold out your hand when we need you and guide us in the best direction. With that, Lord, we pray in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen.